All right, so today we are diving deep into the work of Christopher Nolan and his films.
Okay.
And we're going to be talking about his obsession with practical effects, in the
Okay.
age of CGI and everything being done digitally. Why is he still blowing stuff up?
Yeah, well, I think that's what makes Nolan so fascinating, right? I mean, he's not anti-CGI.
Right.
He uses it when it makes sense,
Of course.
but he seems to have this like almost philosophical commitment to capturing things in camera
Yeah.
whenever humanly possible.
Yeah, it's like he wants to feel it.
Exactly.
Gotta be real.
He wants that tangible reality, and it raises all sorts of questions about, the nature of cinema itself.
It really does, and how far you can push things. So we're going to be diving into some of his most impressive practical effects, from exploding buildings to mind-bending sets,
Oh, yeah.
and trying to understand what drives this obsession. Is he a genius or is he a little bit crazy?
Maybe a little both.
Let's find out.
I mean, even his early films like Memento and Insomnia, they definitely had a more realistic style. You can see the seeds of his approach
Yeah.
kind of starting to sprout there.
Right.
But it was really with Batman Begins that things really took off.
That's right. The Batmobile, that massive Gotham City set they
Oh,
built.
it's iconic.
It's iconic. Instead of relying on green screens, Nolan and his team, they actually built a tangible Gotham. This wasn't just a backdrop.
Yeah.
They constructed streets, alleyways, even a functioning elevated train.
It's insane.
I know, and it was all housed in a giant airship hangar.
Yeah, I read somewhere that the actors just absolutely loved it.
Really?
Yeah, they said it felt like stepping into another world,
I bet.
which I imagine adds a different dimension to a performance compared to acting in front of a green screen.
Yeah. You're not imagining it. You're there. And speaking of tangible, that brings us to the Batmobile,
Oh, yeah.
a custom-built, fully functional vehicle.
It's a beast.
Such a contrast to the CGI-heavy vehicles we often see in superhero films these days.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, this wasn't just designed on a computer. This thing was real.
No, this was a real beast. And then The Dark Knight took the practical effects to another level.
Yeah.
You could really see Nolan's ambition growing,
Yeah.
especially in that scene with the hospital explosion where the Joker walks out of the building as it collapses behind him.
Right?
I mean, they actually had to time the demolition in stages so Heath Ledger could safely escape.
Oh, wow.
It's insane that they pulled it off.
Wouldn't that kind of pressure make you want to just, blow it up on a computer?
Maybe for some directors,
Mm.
but Nolan seems to thrive on that kind of challenge.
Yeah.
And of course, we can't forget about the semi-truck flip,
Oh, my gosh.
which they achieved with a giant piston and a whole lot of TNT.
I can't even imagine the calculations that went into that.
The precision needed to get that shot right without relying on digital manipulation is remarkable.
It's like, that truck's going to flip, but the anticipation, the knowledge that it's real, the stakes are high.
Yeah.
It just adds a completely different level of tension.
It's visceral.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And that tension building through practical effects is something we see again and again in his films.
Totally. And then there's Inception, the film, with that iconic rotating hallway scene.
Oh, yeah.
It's incredibly disorienting, but also visually stunning.
It's a brilliant homage to Stanley Kubrick's rotating set in 2001,
Yeah.
A Space Odyssey.
Right?
But Nolan took it a step further with the complexity of that set.
I can't even imagine.
I mean, imagine having to build this massive rotating set with multiple sections, actors and stunt performers having to perfectly synchronize their movements to avoid serious injury.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about meticulous planning.
At what point would it have been easier to just do that digitally?
Right.
I mean, some of those fight sequences in that hallway must have been incredibly dangerous.
Absolutely. But that real-world danger, it translates on screen.
Right.
Gives the action a sense of weight and consequence that CGI often lacks.
Yeah, for sure. And we see that again in The Dark Knight Rises with that plane heist sequence.
Oh, yes, Bane tearing a chunk out of that airplane mid-flight.
I mean, come on. They used a real plane fuselage for the exterior shots.
I know.
Attached to a helicopter.
Amazing. And when Bane detaches part of the plane,
Right.
mannequins for safety, of course.
Of course.
But it's just amazing how far they were willing to go practically to create that sense of realism.
Yeah, it's really incredible. Now, Nolan's commitment to practical effects goes beyond just the action sequences.
Oh, yeah.
Even in Interstellar, a film with such grand cosmic themes,
Right.
he found ways to ground the story in tangible reality.
Well, they did plant 500 acres of corn for that film.
Oh, I know, I heard about that. They didn't just do that for looks, though.
No.
They wanted to fully immerse the actors in that environment.
Exactly.
And get this, They sold the corn after filming.
Oh, that's right.
So it wasn't just a big wasteful expense.
It was actually pretty resourceful.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the cornfields. They created these massive dust storms on set using giant fans.
So instead of digitally adding like a dust filter or
Yeah.
something, they created the effect for real. I'm starting to think Nolan has a secret desire to be a farmer or a meteorologist.
Huh. On top of being a world-renowned director.
I know. Right. And think about what it must have been like for those actors feeling that dust in their lungs,
Yeah.
the wind whipping around them.
It adds a whole other level of authenticity to their performances.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's like he's saying, if we're going to tell a story about people struggling to survive on a dying Earth,
Yeah.
let's really put them through it.
Right.
And that commitment to capturing real-world environments continues with his portrayal of those alien planets in Interstellar.
Oh, yeah, those Icelandic landscapes.
Oh.
Stunning. To get to these really remote filming locations, they built a road and all this infrastructure and even constructed a large-scale spaceship model for certain shots.
Wow. So instead of relying solely on CGI landscapes, he's finding these incredible real-world locations and then augmenting them with practical models.
Right.
It's like a modern-day version of classic sci-fi filmmaking techniques.
Exactly. And remember those space scenes? They use miniatures for a lot of those shots.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, referencing the techniques they used in 2001, A Space Odyssey.
It's amazing. He's blending old-school techniques with cutting-edge technology to create this really unique visual experience.
It's not just one or the other, it's both.
He's really taking the best of both worlds and using it to his advantage. Now, Tenet is a film that plays with time and perception in such a mind-bending way.
Oh, yeah.
And those reversed action sequences in that film...
They were mostly done practically.
Right, so the actors were actually performing actions in reverse.
They were.
How is that even possible?
They had to learn to walk, talk, and even fight in reverse.
Wow.
And the stuntmen choreographed these movements that would look natural when played backward.
That's crazy. It must have been so complex and demanding.
Oh, absolutely.
Sure.
But it creates this really eerie, unsettling effect.
Yeah.
Like reality is literally rewinding.
Right, and sometimes those reversed actions, they're even more noticeable when played forward, which adds this extra layer of visual intrigue. It's like he's playing tricks with our perception of time.
He loves to do that. And then there's that scene where they undemolish a building.
Oh, yeah.
All done practically.
How did they even do that?
So they rigged the building with explosives very carefully and then filmed the demolition in reverse.
That's insane. It's a testament to Nolan's ingenuity and his team.
Speaking of ingenuity, there's one scene in Tenet that takes the cake. He blew up a real Boeing 747.
What? Are you serious?
Completely serious.
He blew up a real airplane.
He did. It was apparently cheaper than creating the effect digitally.
I don't even know what to say to that. I mean, I get the cornfields and the miniatures, but blowing up a real airplane,
Yeah.
at what point does it cross the line from being brilliant to just being crazy?
Maybe that's part of his genius. He's willing to do whatever it takes to achieve his vision,
Yeah,
even if it means pushing the boundaries of what's considered normal in filmmaking.
it definitely makes you wonder what he'll come up with next.
That's the fun of it. And then we come to his latest film, Oppenheimer,
Okay.
which presented a whole new challenge. How do you recreate the Trinity nuclear test without relying on CGI?
I'm guessing they didn't actually detonate a nuclear bomb.
Huh, definitely not.
Oh,
They experimented with all sorts of explosives and pyrotechnics
wow.
to try to achieve a realistic visual representation.
So how did they do it?
Well, they used propane and gasoline for the initial blast,
Right.
but to get that blinding flash and the mushroom cloud, they incorporated magnesium powder and aluminum powder.
Isn't magnesium powder what they use in flashbang grenades?
It is.
That's both ingenious and terrifying.
It is pretty wild, right?
Yeah.
And the aluminum powder adds to that effect with all its sparks.
So they essentially created a massive controlled explosion using some of the same elements as the flashbang grenade,
Yeah,
but on a much larger scale.
exactly.
It really makes you appreciate the level of planning and the safety precautions that must have gone into that scene.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems that Nolan's commitment to practical effects isn't just about creating a spectacle.
Right.
It's also about pushing the boundaries of what's technically possible.
It's fascinating stuff. We've covered a lot of ground here, but there's still so much more to unpack.
Oh, yeah.
When we come back, we'll explore the impact of these practical effects on the actors, the stunt performers,
Right.
and the overall storytelling in Nolan's films. Don't go anywhere.
We'll be right back. And we are back, continuing our deep dive into the world of Christopher Nolan and his love for practical effects.
You know, it's one thing to like create these incredible effects, but it's another thing to seamlessly integrate them into the story.
Right.
Does shooting this way have an effect on the actors' performances?
I think it has to.
Yeah.
Imagine instead of like reacting to a tennis ball on a stick,
Yeah.
that's supposed to be like an alien creature.
Right.
You're standing in a field of corn that you literally watched grow, or you're facing a real dust storm.
Yeah.
It just adds this level of authenticity that's really hard to replicate with CGI.
It's about experiencing those elements, right?
Yep.
Feeling the grit and the wind rather than just imagining them.
Yeah.
That's got to have an effect. And what about the stunt performers?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're essential to bringing this vision to life.
Absolutely. They're putting their bodies on the line
Yeah.
to create these incredible sequences,
Right.
pushing the boundaries of what's physically possible. I mean, think about that truck flip in The Dark Knight,
Yeah.
or the zero-gravity fight scene in Inception. Those stunts are real.
Right.
And that inherent risk,
Right.
it just adds this level of intensity and excitement for the audience.
You can sense the danger, right? The raw physicality of it all. It's not just pixels on a screen.
Right. Yeah.
It's human beings pushing their limits.
Mhm.
And that brings us to another important aspect of Nolan's filmmaking.
Okay.
His meticulous attention to detail.
Oh, yeah, you see it in everything.
Everything from the set design to the props to the costumes.
It's all meticulously planned.
Yeah.
I've heard those storyboards are insanely detailed.
Oh, yeah. They're like comic book versions of the film. He maps out every shot with incredible precision before they even step on set.
And that meticulousness,
Yeah.
it really shows in the final product. Take the Batcave in Batman Begins, for example.
Okay.
They didn't just build a giant set.
Right.
They used real rocks sourced from caves to give it that authentic texture.
Wow. So he's not just trying to recreate the look, he's trying to capture the feel,
Yeah.
the essence of these spaces. That's next level commitment to detail.
It's all about creating a world that feels completely believable, even if it's Gotham City or a dreamscape. And speaking of believability, let's talk about Interstellar for a moment.
Okay.
We talk about those cornfields and the dust storms,
Right.
really grounding the story in earthly reality.
Yeah.
But how do you portray those vast alien landscapes?
I mean, those landscapes were breathtaking. So otherworldly. I know they filmed in Iceland,
Yeah,
which already has a pretty surreal quality to it.
it does.
But how did they make it feel truly alien?
Well, they used the natural beauty of Iceland, but they also augmented it with these practical techniques.
Okay.
They built roads and infrastructure to access these incredibly remote locations.
Right.
And they even constructed a large-scale model of the spaceship for certain shots.
So it's interesting how he's blending these real-world locations with practical model work, harkening back to the techniques they used in classic sci-fi films like
Yeah,
2001, A Space Odyssey.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that attention to detail extends to those spacesuits,
Oh, yeah.
the ones worn by the astronauts.
Yeah.
They weren't just sleek, futuristic costumes. They were designed with functionality in mind,
Wow.
drawing inspiration from real-world space exploration.
So even something as seemingly mundane as a spacesuit becomes an opportunity to add a layer of realism and authenticity.
Exactly.
It's like he's leaving no stone unturned.
And this brings us to one of the most controversial aspects of Nolan's filmmaking.
Okay.
His insistence on shooting on film stock.
Right. In a digital age,
I know he's one of the few directors left who still does this.
what's his reasoning behind that?
Well, Nolan believes that film captures light and texture in a way that digital just can't replicate.
Okay.
It's got this unique, almost organic quality that adds this depth and this richness to the image.
Right.
It's subtle, but it contributes to that distinct Nolan look.
Doesn't shooting on film make the filmmaking process more difficult, though?
Well, yeah, it definitely presents its own challenges.
Right.
But for Nolan, it's about preserving a certain aesthetic, a level of craftsmanship
Okay.
that he feels is being lost in the digital age.
Yeah.
It forces everyone to slow down, be more deliberate, make each shot count.
It's interesting how this seemingly technical choice about film stock actually impacts the pacing and the rhythm of the entire filmmaking process.
Oh, absolutely.
You can't just keep the cameras rolling and fix it in post-production.
Nope.
Every decision carries more weight.
And I think that careful, deliberate approach is reflected in the structure of his films. The way the stories unfold. His films often deal with these complex, non-linear narratives. They demand your attention.
Yeah.
They're not passive experiences. They're active engagements.
They're like puzzles waiting to be solved.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or mysteries to be unraveled. And his use of practical effects It just enhances that engagement,
Right.
right? Grounding the story in this tangible reality.
Yeah.
He's inviting you to suspend your disbelief and fully immerse yourself in the world he's created.
It's like he's saying, I've gone to all this trouble to make this world feel real now. Come along for the ride.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where I think Nolan's genius truly lies.
Okay.
He understands that cinema is about more than just visuals.
Right.
It's about creating an experience that engages all of your senses.
Yeah.
That pulls you into the story and leaves you thinking about it long after the credits have rolled.
Okay, so we've established that Nolan is incredibly meticulous,
Oh, yeah?
dedicated to realism,
Right.
and has this particular love for old school filmmaking techniques. But is there a deeper meaning, a purpose behind this obsession with practical effects? Or is it just a way to create these cool visuals?
I believe it's about much more than just spectacle.
Okay.
From Nolan, practical effects are a way to achieve authenticity,
Okay.
to create a visceral connection between the audience and the story.
So it's not just about blowing things up or creating these mind-bending sets for the sake of it.
Right.
These effects are carefully chosen to enhance the emotional impact of the story,
Exactly.
to make us feel something deeper.
He wants us to experience the story, not just watch it passively.
Right.
And that sense of tangible reality, that visceral impact,
Yeah.
it plays a crucial role in achieving that.
It's like the difference between reading about a car chase in a book
Yeah.
and actually being in the car,
Right.
feeling the G-forces, the adrenaline.
Exactly. He wants us to be right there in the thick of it.
And that's why even in his films that deal with these abstract, mind-bending concepts like
Right.
time travel and Interstellar
Yeah.
or dreams within dreams and Inception,
There's always this underlying sense of reality,
Yeah.
of tangible weight.
he's anchoring these fantastical concepts in something that we can grasp,
Right.
something that feels real to us.
And that's why his films resonate with us on such a deep level.
Exactly. They're not just intellectual exercises or visual spectacles. They're emotional journeys that make us question, ponder, and ultimately connect with something deeper within ourselves.
It's like he's inviting us to explore these big ideas alongside him,
Yeah,
to grapple with the complexities of time memory and the human condition.
exactly. And that's what sets him apart from so many other filmmakers.
Okay.
He's not afraid to challenge us,
Right.
to make us think. He's not just trying to entertain us, he's trying to engage us in a conversation.
And I think that's where his commitment to practical effects comes full circle.
Yeah.
By creating this sense of realism, he's making these abstract ideas more tangible,
Right.
more accessible to us.
It's like he's grounding those high concept ideas in a reality that we can understand.
Which makes the journey all the more compelling.
So we've talked about the why,
Right.
but let's dive a bit deeper into the how.
Okay.
How does he manage to pull off these incredible feats of filmmaking? I mean, it can't just be him showing up on set and saying, all right, let's blow something up.
Oh, it definitely takes more than that. It all comes down to meticulous planning,
Right.
a dedicated team, and a willingness to push the boundaries of what's possible.
Yeah.
He surrounds himself with the best in the business.
Okay.
Stunt coordinators, special effects experts, production designers,
Right.
and he trusts them to bring their expertise to the table.
It sounds like a well-oiled machine with everyone working in perfect synchronization.
Yeah,
But I'm sure even with the best laid plans, things must go wrong sometimes.
of course.
Especially when you're dealing with practical effects and real-world elements.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Weather can disrupt outdoor shoots, stunts can go wrong, equipment can malfunction.
Right.
But what's remarkable is Nolan's calm demeanor under pressure.
Okay.
He doesn't panic. He assesses the situation,
Yeah.
adjusts the plan.
You know, and keeps moving forward.
It's almost like he's playing chess, always thinking several moves ahead
Right.
and anticipating potential problems.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And he's not afraid to take risks,
Right.
to experiment with new techniques and find creative solutions to these seemingly impossible challenges.
Yeah.
I think that's part of what makes him so fascinating as a filmmaker.
You never know what he's going to come up with next.
Right.
Each film is a surprise, a journey into the unknown.
And that sense of discovery, that willingness to push boundaries,
Yeah.
it's infectious. It inspires us as viewers to open our minds, embrace the unexpected,
Right.
and to challenge our own perceptions of reality.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
From exploding buildings to vast cornfields to the nuances of shooting on film stock.
Yeah.
But as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what's the key takeaway here? What makes Nolan's approach so unique and so impactful?
I think the key takeaway is this. Christopher Nolan is a filmmaker who truly believes in the power of cinema to transport us. Right.
To immerse us in these worlds, both familiar and fantastical.
Right.
And his commitment to practical effects is a testament to that belief.
It's not just about creating cool visuals.
Right.
It's about using those visuals to enhance the story.
Yeah.
To create an experience that truly resonates with the audience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about reminding us that cinema can be more than just entertainment.
Yeah.
It can be art. It can challenge our perceptions, make us question our assumptions, and leave us feeling deeply moved.
Well said. When we come back, we'll delve into what Nolan's filmmaking might mean for the future of cinema and whether his methods will inspire a new generation of filmmakers. Stay tuned. And we are back for the final part of our deep dive into Christopher Nolan's world of practical effects. It's been quite a journey.
It really has. From those exploding buildings to those vast cornfields,
Right.
to the nuances of shooting on film stock.
It seems like nothing is off limits for him when it comes to capturing things for real.
His commitment to authenticity, I think that's what sets him apart.
Yeah.
He's not just trying to wow us with explosions and special effects.
Right.
He's trying to create an experience that feels grounded, believable.
Right.
Even when the subject matter is as fantastical as bending time.
Yeah.
Or venturing into the far reaches of space.
It's like he's inviting us to step inside his imagination.
Right?
But he's building that world with bricks and mortar,
Yeah.
not just pixels and code.
Exactly.
So where does this leave us? What does Nolan's approach mean for the future of filmmaking?
Right.
Is he a lone wolf, a throwback to a bygone era? Or is he paving the way for a new generation of filmmakers?
That's the big question, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
he's definitely a unique figure in Hollywood today.
Yeah.
A director who seems to operate on his own terms, who's not afraid to challenge the status quo.
Right.
But I do think that he is inspiring a new wave of filmmakers
Okay.
who are yearning for something more
Yeah.
than just CGI spectacle.
So you think we might see a resurgence of practical effects in filmmaking? A return to those classic techniques? Maybe even a rebellion against the dominance of CGI?
I mean, it's hard to say for sure. The allure of CGI is still very strong,
Yeah.
especially for those big budget superhero films
Right.
and those fantasy epics.
Yeah.
But I think there's a growing appetite for authenticity,
Okay.
for something tangible
Right.
in a world that's becoming increasingly virtual.
Yeah, you're right. I think people are craving that sense of realism,
Yeah.
that visceral connection to the image on screen.
And
They
you-
want to know that what they're seeing is real,
Right.
or at least rooted in reality.
And Nolan's films, they really tap into that craving.
Yeah,
He's showing us that practical effects can be just as awe-inspiring,
for sure.
just as visually stunning
Yeah.
as anything CGI can conjure up.
And in some ways even more so,
Yeah.
because you know that those explosions were real.
Right.
The stunts were performed by real people risking their necks. There's a certain energy to it,
There is.
a rawness that CGI often lacks.
Absolutely.
Mm.
There's something truly magical about seeing those practical effects play out on screen.
Yeah,
It's a reminder that filmmaking is still a craft,
right.
that there's still room for human ingenuity and artistry in a world that's so dominated by technology.
It's like he's reminding us that the impossible is possible, that we can still bend reality to our will,
Yeah.
even if it takes a little bit of sweat and ingenuity,
A little elbow grease.
and maybe a few explosions along the way.
Exactly. And as we wrap up our deep dive into Christopher Nolan's world,
Yeah.
I think that's a perfect thought to leave our listeners with.
It really is. So to our listeners, we hope this deep dive has given you a new appreciation for Christopher Nolan's work
Yeah.
and the incredible artistry behind those mind-blowing visuals
Absolutely.
the next time you watch one of his films.
Yeah.
Pay attention to those details, those textures, those moments that make you feel like you're right there in the action.
Right.
You might just be witnessing the magic of practical effects at work.
And perhaps you might even be inspired to explore the world a little differently,
Ooh.
to look for those moments of wonder and possibility that exist all around us, just waiting to be discovered.
Beautifully said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.